John for mtgotavern coming at you with a quick deck tech for a deck that we've already played part of League through. This is Esper Midrange, or Garroy's Vengeance, Obzedat, however you wish to categorize it. As a friendly reminder, if you like Magic content, especially of the modern variety, please consider subscribing to the channel, as we aim to be the most informative modern channel on YouTube. So, I always have been a huge sucker for the card Obzedat Ghost Council. I think it's one of the most unique designs of a creature in Magic, and especially with Teferi Time Raveler in the deck. It theoretically becomes possible, as long as Teferi Time Raveler in play, that your Obzedat can never die. And then you're playing a deck based around Garroy's Vengeance and ways to discard Obzedat. You also have Jace Vryn's Prodigy as a nice 1-2 combination with Garroy. You can use Jace to discard an Obzedat and then use Garroy's to get it back, or you can Garroy's a Jace and then flip the Jace if you have enough cards in graveyard, and then Garroy's back an Obzedat. Kind of becomes a one-card combo in some regards with the deck, though obviously it does require you to find one of your legendary creatures, especially Obzedat, to be of particular use. Beyond that, you're just kind of almost a blue-black mid-range Jundish list, using hand disruption like Inquisition, Thoughtseize, Collective Brutality, and then removal spells like Blood Juice, Thirst, and Fatal Push to kind of keep your opponent under control until you can get your own game plan rolling, using things like Thought Scour and Cling to Dust as cantrips, as well as Jace to kind of dig through your deck to find your missing pieces. And then beyond that, you have Liliana of the Veil and Teferi Time Raveler as a nice Planeswalker package. Kind of disrupt your opponent. Obviously, Teferi can tempo your opponent a little bit, while also making counterspells kind of useless if it resolves. And then Liliana of the Veil, obviously a very powerful card, who isn't at her best in the current format, but still a very powerful card, especially when you build your deck around it, like Jund does to a certain extent, and we do with this deck. A couple things of note. 19 lands feels a little bit low, but when your curve's particularly stopping at 3, it's not terrible, but I would consider adding a 20th land. And then the sideboard, there's been a couple things I found questioning when I played the first 3 matches in the league. But sideboard, a couple copies of Nihil Spellbomb, deal with graveyard-based decks, 1 copy of Pithing Needle, whole lot of stuff in the format right now this is kind of relevant against, whether it be anything from Teferis to Jaces to Goblin Charbelchers, any number of random things that this can stop. Planeswalkers out of Tron, etc. Speaking of Tron, 3 copies of Damping Sphere, pretty good, decent against Amulet, pretty good against Tron, slowing your opponent down. Kind of relevant whenever you really don't get your own game plan on, usually until turn 3 or turn 4. 3 copies of Aether Gust. Red decks are a thing. Uro decks are a thing. It's pretty decent against both of those. Ashiok Dreamrender. This was kind of our MVP in our matchup against the Uro deck. Also very good against Amulet. Very good against... decent against Tron. It's not great at any particular thing, but shutting off opponent's fetch lands can be relevant. Shutting off your opponent's graveyard in Uro matchups is relevant, etc. Narset, not the best in this deck, but being able to stop your opponent's Uros from cantripping, finding a piece of disruption, whether it be a Thoughtseize or finding a Garroy's Vengeance if you have your Obzedat. Ashiok Nightmare Muse, well, we do have 5 drops in the deck, in the form of Obzedat. I think resolving a 5-drop Planeswalker is very difficult against any type of blue deck, which I think is where you really want this the most in the current format, as there aren't too terribly many Jund decks. And I just think a 5-mana Planeswalker that it's good, but your deck's not really designed to support 5-mana Planeswalkers. Feels a little iffy there. I almost wonder if it shouldn't be a 3rd Ashiok Dreamrender or perhaps another Narset. And finally, 2 copies of Engineered Explosives, just a fairly nice catch-all against creature decks without going to something like Damnation in your 19-land deck. So, that said, let's get into the final 2 matches in this league and see how it goes. Back with a match here. This hand's a little bit borderline. Couple copies of Thought Scour, a Jace. That part seems reasonable. One land's the only thing that makes me question this hand, but I think I am going to risk it, especially on the draw. So Steam Vents go. Grab a Watery Grave here. Inquisition them. Interesting. So no matter what we take, they can get Stormwing down, which is annoying. Our deck actually doesn't have a lot of ways to kill Stormwing, per se. We still take Metamorphose here. Thought Scour you. Yeah, I'm fine taking the beating this turn, I guess. Hopefully our opponent doesn't draw another blue source. Grab a basic swamp here. Hopefully we don't die this turn. It's card on bottom. Bolt. Yep. Oh well. Alright. We really have nothing to add to the deck to deal with Stormwing Entity. So I think we bring in the 3 Ether Gusts and the 2 Engineered Explosives. Teferi's not like super exciting in this matchup. Probably cut a Garroyos. Cut like 1 or 2 Thoughtseizes. Once again, this feels like a deck we should be pretty reasonable against, but also at the same time, you know, like Heliod, if you don't draw a nice spread of removal, you know, you're in some trouble. And just the fact that their threats happen to be Stormwing Entity, you know, that is a card we are a little bit vulnerable to, with our removal being Bloodchief's Thirst and whatchamacallit. Yeah, hand seems reasonable enough. Don't know that I want to Thoughtseize, fetch Shock Thoughtseize on one. I suppose I could get Basic Islands, so I could go ahead and do this. Just Thoughtseize them. Hopefully take like a Stormwing or something stupid. Light up, Mystical Dispute. That's a ballsy hand if I've ever seen one. I'm not sure if I should be playing around Blood Moon with them or not. If they want to dispute this, that's fine. You have Spell Pierce too? Spell Pierce honestly would kind of suck here. Nope, just stopped. Alright. Yep. Yep. Alright, see if our opponent sends everything at Liliana or if they're sending some at us. I think we do risk tapping out for Jace here. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have Stormwing Entity. Okay, sure. I don't think the game was quite over there, but sure. Still don't want to go too far into the graveyard plan. This hand's okay, I guess. Gonna be painful. Guess we have no choice but to fetch Watery Grave here. Wow. Choosing not to use their really drew a Manamorphose off the top. So annoying. Take 4 and like it here. Not really, but c'est la vie. Oh, of course they get to. Wow. Opponent is ripping extremely well here. Two, three, four. Just plan on fatal pushing here. Yeah, Bedlam makes things considerably more difficult. Somehow hope we don't die with our opponent having 4 cards in hand. Seems rather unlikely. Alright, be back in a minute with the next match. Right, we're back for the second match in finishing up this league. So, I can bemoan my opponent last round drawing particularly well off the top. But, this is one of the weaknesses of a deck like this, is the fact that obviously can't turn down a turn 3 Obzedat. Put Silent Clearing back here. Oh, Drowsy Temple, huh? Not great for the home team. Well, no matter what we would have done, the combo is getting blown up. So I guess we take a Thought-Knot Seer. Pass. Maybe I should have taken Reality Smasher just because I can't deal with Reality Smasher. Bing. Pitch the other Collective Brutality because it's kind of useless. That was dumb. I needed to pitch Obzedat there. Yep. I had a chance to set up the combo and got too much thinking here. Alright. So, Damping Spheres in. EEs probably have to come in. Pithing Needle might be a necessary evil. Collective Brutalities are actively bad in this style of matchup. I might suspect we're on something graveyard related. So the reason I have to bring in EE is Chalice specifically, because Chalice does do a pretty good job of disrupting what we're doing. Fatal Push is decent, but not great. I think we'll go like that. Yeah, I could have set up a situation where I discarded the Obzedat, Groyosed it back there, and then eventually would have had to trade Obzedat for Reality Smasher. But I do think a long game definitely favors them. But the thing I wanted to point out before I got into this match was the removal suite does leave you vulnerable to anything greater than x4 or x equals 4 in terms of CMC. Yeah, I just can't keep this hand. This hand isn't great either, but I still think I keep it. Probably put back a land. Could name Ugin there, but I think I just want to get this out of my hand because of Chalice. Alright, Vengeance isn't terrible. Chalice on 1, which I fully expected. Oh, Walking Ballista. Okay. Okay, now we have the old awkward, do I draw a 5th land situation. I'm going to just take the 4 here. Come on. Hit OK. Should have fetched a white source there. Yes, no, maybe. White. Please stop with these stupid stops, friend. See what they take here. Probably take Obzedat or Garroyos. Take Thoughtseize. Interesting. Let's use this in an awkward spot. Could easily lose something to another Thought Nazi here. Chalice on 2 would be... Oh, Karn, sure. Guess they get to Tormod's Cryptus. Wait, what? You bring in Surgical. Okay. Sure. That's an annoying one. Not sure I particularly want to get a white source here, but alright, I can't even do that anyway. How many misplays can you make in a game? They brought in Worm Coil Engine. Sure, that makes it beatable. I don't even know what I'm hoping to hit here. That was probably not it. And game over. Well, that was definitely a whole bunch of punts. Alright, taking a look at these two matches in conjunction with the first three matches we had. I think a lot of our problems, besides me punting quite a few times in this particular video, part of the problem with the deck setup was the way the removal was structured versus the decks we played. If you look at the matchups we fared well in against Merfolk, our removal lined up pretty decently. Engineer Explosives was an exceptional card in that matchup. And then you look at the Uro pile, copies of Fatal Push were relevant against Uro, copies of Bloodjuice Ascension were relevant against Jace, etc., etc. Look at Heliod. Heliod just kind of overwhelmed, or we really didn't find enough removal in that matchup. And then you look at obviously against Blue-Red Prowess and Eldrazi-tron, the problem we were having was anything greater than 4 CMC. We lost a couple of games to Stormwing Entity, not being able to answer that quite reasonably. We lost to Worm Coil Engines and Reality Smashers. Now, theoretically, if you're executing your game plan correctly, Obzedat, Teferi, Liliana should be able to deal with most of that. But I really do think that some number of Path to Exile or Doomblade effects, whether it be Doomblade itself, Go for the Throat, each one of those obviously have their own particular issues. If you want to go with Path, because it's the most efficient card, you know, I don't think that's a terrible sideboard card for a couple of slots. I just really, you know, I've made several allusions this is a Jund-esque deck, and it really kind of felt that way. You know, we do have this nifty little Groyo's Vengeance, Jace, Obzedat combo. That's a lot of fun. You know, being able to play Obzedat, get that going. But yeah, just tweaking the removal, tweaking a couple of the slots, you know, really hard to, you know, if you're gunning for the top of the meta, which it looks like this build was doing, you know, it seemed decent against the Uro pile we played against. Our opponent did have a punt miscue in game 1 that bailed us out there. Seems pretty good against the Shadow decks. Seems okay against Prowess. You know, theoretically, if we had better removal draws, we could have hung with Heliod. You know, decent amount of removal against Hammer Time. Engineer Explosives pretty good against Hammer Time. You know, that's one of the things about Modern, is it's really hard to tweak a reactionary deck that doesn't have a very big proactive plan. And a lot of the problems we ran into is just our removal didn't line up well enough, and our proactive part of our deck just wasn't showing up. And I think that really cost us a lot of the games, besides, you know, me throwing away a game where I had a Collective Brutality lined up to get my Obzedat into play, and I pitch another Collective Brutality, or, you know, not playing around my own Damping Sphere, and just silly things like that, when I could have Blood Juice Ascension our opponent's Karn that did nothing anyway. But, you know, I do like the theory of, you know, your main deck being basically blue-black control with, you know, a couple of white cards here. But I really think a couple of Path to Exiles. How would I probably approach it? Narset was okay against Uro control, and I think that's the only reason really to leave it in the sideboard. I honestly think I'd probably shave like a Damping Sphere and an Ashiok for like 2 Path to Exile maybe. I don't know, just to give yourself a little more game against those particular cards. And obviously you're not going to run into much Eldrazi Tron these days, etc. It's another one of those decks, along with like Burn and some other decks that have fallen off. But you know, it's something to look at when you're playing a deck that you're not familiar with. Is like, okay, you know, what's this deck trying to do? What's its game plan? What's its, you know, similar decks in the format, etc. Obviously, the deck's executing a fun game plan. It's probably not tier 1, as most Jund-esque strategies aren't right now, other than Red-Black Shadow and maybe Red-Black Midrange. But those decks have their own particular thing going for them. But yeah, this deck was a lot of fun. A little bit frustrating, some of our opponents' draws, some of my own miscues here this morning. So hopefully we will learn some things in this video. And this has been John for MTG Nexus. Hope to see you in the next video.